A couple who built an audience of nearly 3 million people watching them restore a 165-year-old Victorian house just confirmed something their community had quietly feared for weeks. And it has nothing to do with the building. Millie and Louis, the faces behind Belgrave Villa, went public on June 21st with news that ended a chapter far bigger than a renovation update. They have split up, and now neither of them knows what happens to the house. By the time this video is done, you will understand not just what happened between them, but why this particular breakup lands differently from any other creator split you have heard about this year, and what it means for everything they built. There is a building in the uplands area of Swansea, South Wales, that had been sitting empty for over 5 years when two people in their mid-20s decided it was worth saving. The property is called Belgrave Villa. Built in 1859, it had served multiple lives across its 165 years. A private home in its earliest decades, then a doctor's surgery, then a residence for a bishop of the Catholic Church, which eventually became the body that owned it when it fell into disuse. 7 bedrooms, a cellar, an old stable, a building that had absorbed over a century of Welsh history and then, quietly, been forgotten. Millie was 26 when she and her boyfriend Louis, then 27, picked up the keys in March 2024. The purchase price was £410,000. That figure is significant because it represents far below what a 7-bedroom property in habitable condition would command. And the reason it was priced that way was immediately apparent when they walked through the door. Decay had taken hold. Floors needed lifting. Walls needed stripping. Doorways had been bricked over and were no longer doorways at all. The couple had effectively bought a large, cold, historically significant problem, and they had done it with their eyes open. Millie said at the time that they considered it a huge risk, and that they intended to do as much of the work themselves as possible to keep costs manageable. Louis had some construction experience going in. Millie had almost none. She described herself as learning on the job from the moment they arrived. That combination, the scale of the project, the authenticity of the struggle, and the willingness of two young people to do it all on camera, would very soon change the trajectory of both their lives. And that's when the decision was made, the one nobody around them saw coming. Most renovation channels take years to accumulate a meaningful audience. Belgrave Villa did not have years. Their YouTube channel launched on March 28, 2024. Within 4 months, a single Instagram video had reached over 30 million views. That number warrants a pause. 30 million views before most of their audience had even learned their last names. Millie chose not to make their surnames part of the brand identity, and that decision shaped how the channel was perceived from the beginning. Intimate, personal, real. 2 people, a house, a camera. The video that triggered the viral moment captured what the couple found when they started peeling back the layers of the building. What they uncovered was not just structural, it was historical. Behind bricked-up doorways and beneath lifted floorboards, they found a wartime helmet insert belonging to a Dr. Cornelius Patrick Robinson, a former resident who had lived in the house from 1949 to 1986 and served in the Royal Army Medical Corps. They found a certificate of authenticity for what was documented as a piece of the Cross of Christ. The physical cross itself was not present, just the paperwork. They found a 1921 Christmas card hidden inside the floorboards on the top floor, left there by someone now long gone. They found Victorian polish, still in its original container. "Going to start the Belgrave Museum," Millie wrote in one of those early posts, a line that captured exactly the tone their community would come to rely on. Dry, self-aware, real. By the time Newsweek had run a feature on them, by the time DIY communities across multiple continents had shared their content, Belgrave Villa had become something beyond a renovation channel. It was a history channel, a relationship channel, a young people doing something hard channel. The audience did not just follow the house, they followed the people inside it. What happened next is the reason this story spread across the internet. To understand what makes the current situation complicated, you have to understand how Belgrave Villa's identity was constructed. From the beginning, the channel rested on 2 pillars, the house and the relationship. Neither could exist without the other, at least not in the form that grew the audience to where it is now. Millie was the face most consistently on camera, the one who narrated, explained, and translated the renovation process for an audience with no construction background. Louis was the other presence, quieter in some respects, but essential to the visual and emotional framing of what they were doing. Couples restoring a home together. That is the premise. That is the thing the audience showed up for. By early 2026, the numbers had become genuinely substantial. Close to 2 million followers on Instagram, nearly 500,000 YouTube subscribers, 400,000 on TikTok, a combined audience across platforms that most content creators spend years trying to reach. Brand partnerships came in, bathroom manufacturers, flooring companies, material suppliers. The renovation that was supposed to be a personal project had become a functioning media operation. There were bumps along the way. In April 2025, a building inspector arrived at their door following a complaint filed by someone in Australia, a viewer who had emailed building control in Swansea to flag concerns about their methods. The couple addressed it openly. Millie said on camera, "I have a bone to pick." The community rallied around them. Australian followers collectively apologized on behalf of the person who filed the complaint. The incident resolved without lasting consequence. That episode mattered because it showed how the community had formed around this project. Protective, invested, emotionally engaged. These were not passive viewers. They were stakeholders. And that dynamic, which had served the channel so well, was about to make the announcement of June 2026 hit far harder than a typical creator update. Most people who know this story stop here, but the real story starts right now. The signs were visible before the words were spoken. For several weeks leading into June 2026, something had shifted at Belgrave Villa, or more specifically, someone had shifted out of frame. Lewis was no longer appearing in videos. The most recent upload on YouTube was 2 weeks old and counting. The Instagram account, which had maintained a consistent presence through the renovation's most active phases, had gone quiet for close to a month. The comments section filled with questions. Where is Lewis? Is everything okay? Has something happened at the house? The audience had been trained to notice his absence precisely because his presence had been a fixture of the content. Millie did not address it immediately. That restraint, in retrospect, was not strategic, it was honest. She later said directly that she was not holding back information from the community. The reason for the delay was simple. She did not yet have an answer herself. Lewis had gone to Australia in March 2026. He had traveled there with friends, and both of them had needed space, time away from the house, from the cameras, and from each other, before they could work out what the situation actually was. Specifically, who was keeping the house, who was moving forward with the renovation, and what the channel would look like going forward. That process took months. It was not resolved in a single conversation. The physical reality of the situation, a half-renovated, 7-bedroom Victorian property that neither of them could simply vacate and move on from, meant that untangling the personal had to happen alongside untangling the logistical. And if you think that was surprising, stay with me because this next part is why the whole story matters. On June 21, 2026, Millie released an update on the Belgrave Villa channel. No dramatic production, no scripted statement, just her, speaking to camera, in the manner the community had always known. She was clear, she was calm, and she did not soften what needed to be said. Unfortunately, Lewis and I have split up. What followed was not a breakdown or a performance of grief. It was a measured, considered account of what had happened, and importantly, what had not happened. She addressed directly the question of whether the audience had been misled during the weeks of silence. "At no point have we been dishonest," she said. When she had previously mentioned Lewis being in Australia, he was in Australia. The absence of further updates was not concealment. It was a genuine gap in information that she could not fill until she had it herself. She acknowledged that continuing the renovation without him would not be easy. The word she used was not easy, not impossible, but not simple either. The house is still in the middle of a significant project. Work that was planned as a shared endeavor now needs to be reconsidered. And the question of who keeps the property, who gets to live in those rooms when they are finally done, had not been publicly resolved as of the announcement. Lewis, for his part, confirmed in his own statement that he has a new project underway. He described it as interesting, though he said he was unsure about creating a YouTube channel around it. The response from the community was immediate and overwhelming in its warmth. "You owe no one an apology," one viewer wrote. "I admire how this is being handled," wrote another. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got, until now. The personal element of the Belgrave Villa breakup has received nearly all of the attention. That is understandable. But there is a layer to this story that goes beyond the relationship, and it is the layer that will determine what this channel looks like in 6 months. When a content creator couple splits up, the typical outcome is that the channel either continues under one person or effectively ends. Those decisions are rarely straightforward when the channel is built around a single subject, in this case the house. Belgrave Villa is not a personality-led channel in the traditional sense. The personality matters enormously, but the house is the product. The renovation is the reason the audience exists, and the renovation is unfinished. This creates a situation with no clean template. If Millie continues, and she has said she wants to, she faces the challenge of maintaining a channel whose founding premise was two people working on a shared home. The home is now not shared. Every room that gets restored from this point forward will carry the context of what changed, whether that context is spoken or not. The question of who legally retains the property is, from a content standpoint, the most consequential unresolved detail. A $410,000 Victorian property in mid-renovation is not something either party can easily walk away from financially. The equity is tied up in walls that are not yet finished. The returns, both financial and in terms of the channel's long-term value, are contingent on the work being completed. What Millie has demonstrated in every step of her public communication is a refusal to dramatize what can be stated plainly. That instinct, which built the channel in the first place, is the exact quality that gives this next chapter its best chance. And that's when the decision was made, the one nobody around her saw coming. Millie, at 26, is now the primary custodian of both a partially restored Victorian building and a social media presence with nearly 3 million combined followers. That sentence contains a pressure most people her age will never encounter. The renovation that began as a personal project, a risk she and Louis took together with clear eyes and no guarantees, has become a documented public story with an unresolved third act. The audience has shown, through 2 years of consistent engagement, that what they are watching is not strictly the house, it is the person inside the house. The discovery of a wartime helmet insert behind a bricked-up wall was compelling because of how Millie reacted to it. The dry caption, the genuine curiosity, the instinct to research the man it belonged to and share what was found. That quality of engagement does not disappear with a relationship. It belongs to the individual. Louis, in his own message to the community, hinted at a different future rather than a closed one. A new project, unspecified. The question of a YouTube channel for that project still open. For an audience that followed both people, that ambiguity is its own kind of update. Not an ending, but a fork. The community that formed around Belgrave Villa has proven itself to be unusually literate about how content creation works. They noticed the absence. They asked the questions. They absorbed the announcement without fracturing. That is not a given with an audience this size. It reflects something genuine about what was built. What happens to the house is, ultimately, a legal and financial question that will resolve itself over time. What happens to the channel is a creative question, and the answer to that one, more than anything else, will define what Belgrave Villa means going forward. Here's what the comments kept asking, and here's the answer they never got. Until now. The story of Belgrave Villa is not, at its core, a story about a relationship ending. It is a story about two people in their mid-20s who looked at a crumbling 7-bedroom Victorian building, purchased from the Catholic Church, abandoned for years, full of bricked-up doorways and historical artifacts, and decided it was worth saving. That decision was made before anyone was watching, before the 30 million views, before the Instagram followers and the brand deals and the YouTube channel. They bet on the building because they wanted to. What followed was a documentation of that bet in real time. Every lifted floorboard, every discovered artifact, every problem that came in through an unexpected phone call, including a building inspection triggered by a complaint filed from the other side of the world, became part of a shared record. Now that record continues under different circumstances. The bet on the building is still active. The bet on the relationship has been resolved in the most honest and straightforward way either of them could have managed, with a direct statement, minimal drama, and a clear acknowledgement that neither person misled their audience during the months it took to arrive at an answer. That, in a landscape where creator breakups tend to generate controversy or competing narratives, is genuinely notable. There is no drama here, only the unglamorous reality of two people separating from a life they built together, and doing it with as much clarity as they can. Belgrave Villa is still standing. The walls are still being worked on, and the person who will continue that work has, in this moment, told her community exactly what they needed to hear, even when that information was hard, and even when it took time to be sure. What Belgrave Villa confirmed on June 21st was not simply the end of a relationship. It was a turning point in a renovation story that has always been about more than walls and plaster. Millie's announcement was frank, considered, and delivered on her own terms, which is exactly how she has handled every difficult moment this project has thrown at her since March 2024. The next chapter of Belgrave Villa will be built by one person instead of two, with the questions around the property's ownership still to resolve, and with an audience of nearly 3 million people watching to see what she does with it. Lewis, meanwhile, steps away towards something new, unspecified but not closed. The house is not finished. The story is not finished. What comes next? Whether Millie completes the renovation, whether the question of ownership resolves cleanly, whether Lewis eventually returns to content creation on his own terms, will unfold in exactly the same way this whole journey has. In public, in real time, without the drama most people would have reached for. Do you think Millie should continue the Belgrave Villa channel solo? Or is this the kind of project that only works if both people are in it? Drop your answer below, because this one could go either way.